In this video, we will be looking at lesson 23, examining scatterplots. First, what is a scatterplot? As the name would indicate, it's a plot with points scattered around. A scatterplot is a graph of bivariate data. And what I mean by bivariate is two variable. It's XY data. We're going to be plotting points when we look at bivariate data. How do we describe scatterplots? You will use this acronym, DOFS, D, O, F, S. This first D stands for direction. Our direction will be either positive or negative. That is, as we read, much like when we describe slope of a line, as we read from left to right, do the points appear to be moving in an upwards direction or a downwards direction? O, outlier. Does there appear to be some point that's substantially different than the rest of the trend? I'm just going to call this the eyeball test. You're simply going to examine your scatter plot and see, is there a point well outside our general pattern? It may be that we've collected that data poorly, or it may be that that point provides us a lot of information, or something in between. But outliers, they will be of note to us. Form. For our purposes right now, we're only going to have two forms we will talk about: linear or non-linear, that is everything else. And when I say linear, I don't mean what we mean in algebra, falls in an exact straight line. I mean it's going to represent a general linear pattern, and we'll see an example here in a second. Lastly, strength. And we will use these three words to describe the strength of our association: strong, moderate, or weak. All right. One final term, association. When we examine our scatter plot, what we're looking for is some association between the two variables. And other synonyms for association will be a relationship, trend, and then we will soon talk about a final word, correlation. We will discuss this in a later lesson. Correlation has to do with quantifying this particular relationship. Today we will stick mostly with these first three words: association, relationship, and trend. All right, let's look at some specific examples. Let's say that we collected data on your whole school, and we looked at the number of hours people studied, and their grades in their courses. What kind of relationship would you expect? Well, I bet you would guess that it would be positive. That is, as the number of hours studied increased, grades would tend to increase. And in fact, that would be the case. We might see points that were gathered in this sort of configuration here. Not a perfectly straight line, but generally in this form. That is, as the number of hours studied increase, the grades increase. Using my mnemonic DOFs here, the direction is positive. As x increases, y increases. Or likewise, as x decreases, y decreases. Positive means they move together. One goes up, the other goes up, one goes down, the other goes down. Outliers, we appear to have no outliers here. Form, this is definitely a linear form. While it's not in a perfectly straight line, you can see that it fits this general linear form. That doesn't appear to be some kind of curve to it. Lastly, strength. Well, is this strong, moderate, or weak? Right now, you might not be clear about what these words mean. We will look at enough examples and you will get an idea, but we might call this relatively strong. That is, if you drew one line through the middle, you can see that our points are fairly close to that line. There's not a great deal of spread about some line drawn through them. Okay. Well, let's consider two different variables. This time, let's look at number of absences in grades. Well, you might imagine as your number of absences increase, your grades will tend to decrease. So this plot might look something like this. But perhaps we have some person that was absent a whole lot. Maybe they were sick for an extended period of time, but they worked really hard and they still did okay. And maybe you had somebody that was very rarely absent, but they didn't work very hard. Maybe their points here. This still has a linear form. That is, it's not some curve to it. But the direction is clearly negative. That is, as the grades increase, as the number of absences increase, the grades tend to decrease, and that makes sense. In this case, we have a couple of outliers, numbers that fall outside of our general form. And how would we describe this? Well, potentially this would be a moderate relationship because we are a little more spread out about some trend line that we would draw through here. All right. So we said this first relationship was positive. And by positive we mean that they're both going up or going down. In this case, x increases and y increases. This relationship is negative. As x increases, y tends to decrease. So lastly, let's look at two variables that would have no relationship. Okay. I am considering now height in grades. I'm sure you know some short people that are excellent students, and I'm sure you know some short people who are poor students. Likewise for tall people. If we looked at this scatter plot, it would look something like a shotgun blast. That is, points all over the place. All right. This person here is a tall person who has high grades. This is a tall person who has low grades. This is a short person with low grades. This is a short person with high grades. And this person is of average height and average grades. So you see here there is no relationship. We say no association between height and grades. And that concludes our notes for this lesson.